Welcome to episode number 28 of Colorado TechCast. On this episode, I'm joined by the founders of OverWatchID, a cloud-based identity and access management company who've recently closed a $2.5 million financing round.
Andy Funk has 20 years in the technology industry and managed services segment. An astute investment decision maker, including angel investments into tech corporations, Andy's held management and executive roles with a Fortune-ranked telecom. He was part of the executive team and one of the original team members of Virtela Technology Services Inc, which created a successful exit when acquired in 2014 by NTT Communications for $525 million. From the development of supply chains globally to architecting database systems, Andy's tight strategic sourcing skills have played out across accounts like IBM, Hitachi, Kraft Foods, and Deutsche Bank.
Today, I'm joined by Andy Funk, CEO, and Cameron Williams, CTO of OverWatchID. I've seen a lot of press about you recently, whether it was in the Denver Business Journal or various trade publications. Why don't you give us a little overview of what Overwatch is and what space you guys play in now?
Sure. I'll go ahead. So we are, we believe, the first converged identity security platform that combines privileged access management, CASB, so cloud access security brokering, single sign-on and directory services, and multi-factor authentication into one holistic platform. That in and of itself is I guess, that's kind of cool to combine all those things, but what our secret sauce is really using automation, heavy automation techniques, meaning DevOps techniques like Ansible, Chef, Puppet, and other automation techniques to rapidly deploy these solutions into corporate infrastructure so that companies can gain the benefits of these things that typically take months and months or years even to deploy and convert that number to hours or days of deployment and really start realizing the security efficacy promises that these technologies have. So that's really our secret sauce, or why we win, or why we're really cool.
So CASB, so Cloud Access Security Broker, multi-factor authentication, single sign-on, privileged account management. You guys really run the gamut of the security suite.
This is focused around identity segment only. There's plenty of other spaces where we don't live, in the perimeter defense and endpoint protection, and there's a lot of other logging and functionality. We really live very much in the identity space and secure the user. All these things that we do are critical to make fully mitigate that risk, and putting those together and having them work together is why we built the platform this way. So.
Yeah, it's identity security is the identity breach vector. So using compromised credentials to impersonate the users of those compromised credentials, gain access to the data that they have access to, is the number one it's the number one breach vector. So we're to really deploy an effective countermeasure for that breach vector. You really need to effectively deploy privileged access management and cloud access security brokering and multi-factor authentication and single sign-on kind of just play into those kind of key categories. And when we started the company, one of the things that I looked into the environment and said, I want to fix the problems with identity security. Identity security is kind of core to my career path and the core to the things that I've been trying to solve throughout my career, doing breach mitigation and so on. And looking into those things, and what I found is those kind of acronyms they really existed prior to OverWatchID, and these point solutions that really didn't work together very well. So building a system that all those technologies work well together is definitely our vision. But the other vision is, they also take years and years and years to deploy and see the ROI from deploying those countermeasures. And that's something that, my background and my team's background, we have lots of experience doing automation from my days helping build out the first version of IBM Cloud and automation at a company called Virtela Technology Services, which is now NTT, and some of our other guys that worked at some other large telecoms and
Time Warner,
Bank of America, and so on, and building out automation in those environments as well. So that we use automation is kind of core to our solution, as well as solving those kind those integration points.
Yeah, and I think, Trapper, it's important to kind of point out, you mentioned we're doing a lot of these things there. They're modular. It's not that one company has to use our MFA or our single sign-on if they're happy with those. Our technology works. They need to work together, and if you have that in place, that's great. But we strongly suggest, obviously, MFA wherever you can put it, and single sign-on working with your MFA tied into your PAM solution. But our stuff works well with other solutions if those are already deployed technologies for customers, and we've built our own platform that works well with those technologies. I think that's an important point. It's not an all or nothing solution.
So I think the modularity is key there because so many companies already are invested heavily in single sign-on or multi-factor authentication, although more companies should embrace multi-factor authentication.
Yeah, that's one of the things that we did was build up. We wanted to design something with the intent that hey, some folks like the MFA vendor that they already have in place and so on. So again, our system plays well with others. It was designed from ground up to play well with others in those other categories.
With your backgrounds, your joint backgrounds in large Fortune 500 companies, how has that helped shape the product direction? I mean, if it's modular, it's more likely to be able to get in the door, I would assume, than if you were a complete suite.
The pain points from large enterprise are those that are being felt by mid-market now and smaller as people move more and more things to the cloud. I think the experience in my days at Quest and Cameron at IBM and us together at Virtela and dealing and supporting with Fortune 250 type accounts, those risks and exposures to moving things to the cloud and what they're doing for very complex infrastructures is starting to move down market, right? And everybody faces those same issues. And so having been able to build it in that type of environment, and I'll let Cameron talk about it, but building it for the world's largest companies creates a foundation for what we're building, and it was very critical to what we built here.
Yeah, I think we're solving problems for the entire market. I agree that we also want some of those countermeasures that I just mentioned, PAM and CASB. Those typically have been just from a price point. The companies that focus on building those technologies are also focused on kind of a very small segment of the market, which is the Fortune 250 or better, just from a price point perspective. So companies, even larger mid-market size companies that are maybe are on the low $1 billion in revenue kind of companies, some of these countermeasures are $8-10 million for a company that size to deploy, and that may be more than their annual IT budget to begin with for one countermeasure. So one of the things that, because we use automation, because we use a very frictionless deployment, we're able to drastically reduce the cost of these technologies and offer them not only to the enterprise, and we absolutely have very large enterprise clients that have these kind of point solutions in place that maybe are partial or even failed deployments in some of these technologies. Because of our automation, because of our ease of our frictionless deployment, we're solving those problems for those large enterprise companies and typically replacing those kind of legacy older point solutions with some newer technologies, more that have a better security efficacy. But we're also able to offer those same technologies into the mid-market, into the SMB, which have the same number of breaches. They're targeted by the same folks. The breaches at sometimes are a breach impact for an SMB are typically 60% of all SMBs that experience a breach event go out of business within 30 days after the breach. So there's some statistics out in the market that support those numbers, and the same thing for mid-market size companies, but definitely worried about their brand, worried about protecting their clients' data and information, and as these state-based data privacy requirements start to, as that Colorado just released a very comprehensive data privacy requirement for companies in September, and California has a very specific, very detailed one, New York, and so on and so forth. As states and government entities require data privacy, more stringent data privacy requirements, those things are also driving those kind of smaller companies, mid-market size companies, SMBs, and so on, to have to figure out a way to comply with those data privacy requirements and put countermeasures in place for this stuff.
Your product really makes enterprise-grade security accessible to the small and medium-sized business markets, right?
That's right. I mean, we're not solely focused on those groups of folks. I mean, our design was to build a better PAM system, build a better CASB solution, make it quicker to deploy, and which is every vertical, is everybody's challenge is how do you get these very heavy manual burden on configuring and deploying these types of countermeasures. How do you get them deployed into your corporation? Because we use automation, we're able to reduce the price. So that means that folks that are typically priced out of those technologies organizations that are typically priced out of those technologies can now afford those technologies in their environment.
It's really assuring it, as a small business owner, knowing that there's protection options out there that won't break the bank. So I think
we see lots of as Cameron's referring to. There's a lot of companies who are struggling with a limited budget, and they have to pick and choose these technologies. And in reality, when you step back and read things like the zero trust model, as Cameron's referring to, all of them are required. So picking and choosing really puts you at a big risk of exposure. And we solve that. We've done that for many of our clients who were on the fence of whether they could fully deploy MFA, and then they wanted a PAM technology. They wanted to deploy CASB but couldn't afford it. Now we have a solution that really fully covers them in a way that does all the things that are necessary to fully mitigate that without having to pick and choose.
So take me back to the early days. Like, what were you guys doing before Overwatch? And what was your aha moment of, there's got to be a better way to do this, or there's got to be a more lucrative way to run a company?
Yeah, I've been building access management systems and automated pen test systems and security event correlation systems and so on throughout my career. My career has been over 25 years in managed security services, from my days at MCI working on the government side and having clearance and working at IBM here in Boulder. That's how I got to Colorado, and doing breach mitigation for some of the kind of notable breach mitigation that I worked was I rebuilt BP during the New Horizon oil spill, where they were getting hit by Anonymous and other large volumetric DDoS attacks and other advanced persistent attacks. I also worked on the PlayStation Network breach in 2011. Had some interaction with the Sony Pictures breach in November 2014. Worked with Sony for quite some time after that breach as well. Some others in financial markets that I can't really talk about, but breach mitigation and building managed security service countermeasures. My days at Virtela and Telesecure here in Denver, working for Juniper Networks in the Bay Area, and just working on security countermeasures, and we're trying to work on the kind of these number one breach vectors, identity being the number one that I've had to work with throughout my career, and then building access management systems that securely manage access to routers, switches, firewall servers, and so on has been kind of core to my career path. So.
And I would say when Cameron and I first started talking, and we met each other 14 years ago, so we've known each other a long time. Had a couple conversations about what could be the next kind of business idea. He was out, and I'll help him. Kind of some of that was trying to source multi-vendor PAM and a multi-tenanted PAM solution, and there wasn't stuff in the market. And he was explaining to me a little bit about it. Some of the world's largest companies. Talking through that with that technology with them, they're saying they want to buy that platform, really kind of said, hey, there's a market for this, and this is a product that is, the industry's ripe for some new technology and solutions, right? So.
Yeah, it really started with access management. I think I built a PAM system as kind of version 3 of of access management. I think my first access management system that I had hands-on building was in 2005, but my last one was for one of the last companies I worked for, and I built a multi-tenant PAM system, and I went out into the market to evangelize. It was really just being used by the company I was working for to manage, to provide a managed service to their clientele. And I went out and I met up with large cancer research centers, large insurance companies. I don't want to name names here, but very large organizations that had kind of bought and tried to deploy PAM, privileged access management systems from the Magic Quadrant market leaders, And what I was seeing almost exclusively was that all of those companies had what I would call either a partial or failed deployment, or they'd shelved the technology altogether. And so I knew I could build a better PAM solution. I've been building access management solutions, which is has become the acronym PAM for quite some time. And then, but my vision was, hey, you really need MFA to work with PAM. CASB, our CASB engine, has been called innovative by Gartner and Forrester. It's really taking our PAM engine and pointing it at cloud applications and securing them. A lot of CASB solutions end up becoming just really cloud DLP engines. And we have DLP-like capabilities in our platform as well, but we really are uniquely securing how standard users access, say, ADP to check their 401k, their W-2s, and all that kind of stuff, but also Nancy in Human Resources that has admin level access to all employee PII that's housed in that ADP application. We do some really unique things that with that CASB acronym that not a lot of other vendors have thought about, just from our perspective of, well, who's the higher value target? Joe that has access to his 401k information, or Nancy that has access to all employees' 401k information. Nancy's obviously the higher value target from a breach or bad actor perspective. And that's kind of how I look at all security, is solve the high value targets and then go down stack to the lower value targets.
And I'll add something else that I think is unique. We know is unique in our platform is, if you're a typical business today and you went out and did what you had to do prior to OverWatchID, integrate multiple different vendors' technology, you don't have the same security methodology and brokering systems, whether it's a Linux server, a Windows server, which is typical PAM technologies, or Cameron was referring to ADP, NetSuite, and Salesforce. Now with OverWatchID, you have the same level of protection, screen capture replay, brokering connections, obfuscating credentials, whether it's a cloud, whether it's a cloud account or a private infrastructure, and that's really very unique in the space and something that's really necessary. So if I'm a CISO and I make a purchase decision, I have protection across my entire infrastructure and environment, whether it's in the cloud or it's a web UI or a private infrastructure.
Right, so, yeah, whether it's a cloud application or a router, or switch, or firewall, or server, wherever that may sit. So that's really our concept, is protecting everything. So protecting cloud applications, access to those, admin access to those, the data that's housed in those, as well as all of your infrastructure, be it on-prem or hybrid cloud, private cloud, public cloud deployment as well.
So where does the product actually sit in the network stack? Is it on-premise?
So we have 3 form factors. Yep, we were born in the cloud, so we our head end that is primarily used by most clients is a very hardened cloud SaaS head end that's in any deployment. We support multiple regions as well, so EMEA, Asia Pac, US, East, West, and so on. But we also can support a deployment within a private cloud deployment, so like a private VPC deployment, and also more traditional on-prem dedicated deployments that are within a client's infrastructure. So say in like VMware vCenter deployment, for instance.
So you guys started in 2016, but over the summer you raised $2.5 million in seed funding. Right?
Yeah, we've raised money kind of through different stages as we've hit kind of key milestones, getting the product to MVP and starting to demo the product, to fully launching it and starting to generate revenue and bring on customers. And we've raised about a little over $5 million to date. I think in 2018 so far to date, we've raised $2.5 million. That's right.
What's spurring the growth? I mean, from other than everything's moving to the cloud, right? Have you seen a definite uptick in your business, or is this just slowly, gradually building along?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely, our business is definitely hockey sticking for sure. I mean, it's I think when we're definitely getting more adoption. We're getting lots of clients that are using our product, and we have referenceable clients. It's interesting. It's really flattering that we have a lot of our clients are willing to do reference calls with a lot of our new prospective clients as well. We've got a really solid interest in our platform, and as people hear about our product and they're intrigued about how we do things, and then they hear a little bit more about, maybe this company that they know some folks that are using it, and so on and so forth. As that kind of organic, village of people referencing us grows. I think it's bringing us more interest and more clients and so on. So we're definitely have experienced some significant growth over the last 6 to 12 months.
That good work at clients just becomes exponential, right? You go in, do a good job at one place, they tell their friends, and it just expands from there into a full-fledged operation before you know it. What was it like landing your first customer, or how did you find your first customer?
It's interesting. We actually went to RSA 2017. That's kind of our first trade show, and I went to an ISSA event. And, we've kind of our marketing scheme is going to ISSA events and going to these kind of smaller engineering based or trade shows and things like that, and we've really gotten some great traction there. Most of the folks that we had at our RSA event when we were kind of releasing our MVP or alpha product, if you will, at RSA 2017, we had a fair amount of engineering folks in the crowd, and one of those engineering folks is a very prominent ethical hacker. He's one of the guys that was able to track down the folks that initially initiated the WannaCry Trojan, ransomware Trojan, and tracked that down, shared that information with Interpol. His name's Golan Benoit, and he's been a very large advocate for us on the East Coast, and one of our first clients that actually came through Golan from a reference from Golan. So
he's also the CTO at IDT Corp.
That's right, IDT Telecom.
Yep.
So that was, and he was, and we have lots of friends in the industry. Obviously, 25 years of doing managed services. I've got lots of friends in and around Colorado, as well as out in the Bay Area and on the East Coast, and a lot of our friends have made introductions for us. And so when we're early stage, I think it's natural for a startup to reach out to, kind of friends and family, if you will, and see if there's more friends than family, I think, but reach out to your Rolodex of friends that you've worked with throughout the years, and to see if there's opportunities for partnering and using and introducing us to folks that have need for our technology.
I think the experience you referenced what it was like with our first couple of customers. We certainly provided quite a bit of they provided quite a bit of feedback and guidance as to the technology they needed. We became quite a useful fit for them and able to customize the platform, the things that we could replicate as well. So there was a lot of interaction and good work between us and one of our first customers at Datavale, who's a local.
Yeah, Datavale local here, Frontier Airlines as well, one of our...
Unitas Global.
Unitas Global, yeah, some other... So we've had some really great... enterprise level folks and managed services level folks like Datavale that have really given us some great partnership feedback. I mean, so they're early adopters of our technology, but also willing to work with us to really help us craft the product and create and give us enhancement requests and so on that are obviously appropriate for other clients, and we rapidly. One of the things that we do with our dev team is we've rapidly adopted those kind of enhancement requests from our clients to try to obviously build, if it's a need for Datavale or Frontier, it's probably going to be need for, retailer B or, customer C, so on and so forth. So one of the things that we've done from a development perspective is probably half the work that we do is enhancement requests or obviously new features and functionality that we're trying to build in our product and innovate. So.
Hearing feedback directly from your customers is really valuable information, especially if you've got Frontier under wraps and you're trying to pitch United or Southwest or another company in this similar industry, or Delta.
Cathay
Pacific. Kind of literally solving a specific vertical and industry is absolutely something we've focused on, and there's some very unique fits for the retail and the airline vertical as well. But that's right. So,
we're really we've been really fortunate to have such great client base that again are not only willing to help us and take a chance with an early stage startup, but also and they've not just taken the chance. They've stood up our product next to our competitors' products. Frontier had definitely done a very comprehensive comparison against point solutions in the marketplace, and we luckily came out ahead, but also have been working with us and interested in continuing to improve our product and so on. So
that relationship with our clients is extremely critical to us, and using their feedback and making sure that when they've made that commitment that we continue to make them look good for the decisions they've made, right?
Yeah.
And that's where we look.
As well as them being willing to be a reference and so on has been really helpful for us.
So going back to, you mentioned the friends and family with your initial funding. How did your network play a role in seeking additional amounts of funding?
So I think it's a very typical progression for a early stage company to grow to where they are to get to a growth company. You have typical maybe a friends and family round. You have high net worth accredited investors. Then you move towards angels, super angels, micro VC funds, some family funds. We progressed down that path, very, very typical, I would say. In our last round, we had 4 institutional investors come in, and that's more likely and not more likely. That's where our progression will go towards our next funding round. And we are continuing that conversation with those VC firms that invested in us, as well as some introductions they've made into other firms. But we're very unlikely to stay through the angels and micro super angel type funds or investors for our next round, if that's what you're asking. We're kind of making a normal and pretty typical progression towards the venture capital type investors for our next round. I think that we have a long plan for what we're planning to do. Going public is a much different scenario, right? We have our heads down to continue to build a product that's changing the market and execute on a really great opportunity we have. If some opportunity came up in the future for that, there's a substantial amount of
we're playing the long game.
Yeah.
So for sure, we're intent on building a company and staying in Colorado. I think that's another key point is we're invested in Colorado and the folks here and the community here, and we very much are Colorado. I'm not a Colorado native either, but the longest I've ever lived anywhere. So, but yeah, I think we're focused on building a company and continuing to improve our product and go to market and gain more our share and do all the things that are necessary to do that. And again, continue to build our own community here, our OverWatchID community, and expand our teams here and our offshore engagement in the Philippines and keep our heads down and then go after it. So there's obviously if opportunities come up, those are things that we weigh as they come across our desk. But
I'm glad you're here in Colorado. I don't think there's a better place for technology right now. And as much as security is growing, the need for security is growing. I attended a talk this morning about responsible business practices for security, knowing that, the premise was basically don't overspend on security to the point of it's at a detriment. So many security products out there, though, are out of reach of smaller organizations. So knowing that, that Overwatch is here and you guys have a suite of products that are modular, so you can kind of pick and choose as you need, or as either your budget permits or your infrastructure will support, I think is valuable and puts you guys in a really good place here.
Yeah, I mean, we're in a growth phase, right? We've got a product to market that is absolutely getting tons of validation and traction. We just want to continue to expand our scope and grow grow the product and grow our customer base. Continue to grow the business.
Continue to innovate around identity security countermeasures. So like areas like user behavior analytics and some other kind of key focused areas around user persona provisioning, deprovisioning for cloud applications, as well as infrastructure user management and kind of easing that burden that is typically a heavy burden for the IT group. But not only the IT group, but any person, any person within a corporation or organization that uses cloud applications, typically the managing their access and their personas within cloud applications is a fairly heavy burden that's typically taken on by the IT organization. So automation around that persona management, provisioning and deprovisioning of those users within cloud applications, and then again, more security efficacy around access management and identity security as a whole. We have some innovations around multi-factor authentication that we've got some patents pending for, and then moving and doing some additional factors of authentication with gating, if you will. We call it gating, that we plan to add and bring to market as well. And then obviously just addressing, that's for new clients, that's for also existing clients. We are continuing to improve our existing clients' posture and making their lives easier from an identity security perspective is really definitely core to our belief and our plan.
Sounds good. Sounds like you guys have a solid game plan, and with additional funding that you've picked up over the summer, you are probably poised to execute well on that strategy.
Yep, thank you. Yeah,
I believe so as well.
If you guys have any webinars or anything you want to point people to, feel free to share.
There's information content on our websites. There are.
Yeah. So we've definitely got lots of information on our website about our product. We've got several blog videos about the quote-unquote dirty little secrets of PAM and some of the problems with that technology and solving what we see as has the most security efficacy promise, but also one of the biggest challenges in the identity security space, and how we solve that challenge. We've got lots of events coming up, so we're sponsoring the Red Sky event next week, and we'll be at EDUCAUSE on Thursday of this week with our partner Zavaro. That's November 1st, and we'll be downtown in EDUCAUSE, so we've got a fair amount of interest from higher ed and K through 12 for how to secure faculty and students and so on for those organizations. We also have Gartner IAM Summit coming up, where we're sponsoring that. We're speaking engagement. I'll be speaking at Red Sky as well on November 7th, the Red Sky Security Summit here in Denver. And then also have a speaking engagement in Portland, Oregon for the ISSA IAM Summit in Portland, Oregon on the 29th. And then the final kind of show for the year is our Gartner IAM Summit, which is that's December 3rd to the 5th. We'll also be speaking there about how to roll out Zero Trust before you get gray hair, or do it within a reasonable amount of time. Like if you have a child that just was born, doing it before that child gets into elementary school, if you will. So anyway, lots of information online, lots of events where folks can come meet with us and we can give you demos and show our product and so on.
We get links to all of those events in the show notes of this podcast. Andy, Cameron, I want to thank you guys for your time, for coming on Colorado TechCast. It sounds like you guys are doing up to a lot of really great things, and the press coverage that I've been seeing about you guys over the last few months, either the Denver Business Journal or some of the other security publications. It sounds like you guys really tapped into a prime market, and I wish you guys the best of luck.
Thanks, Trapper.
Appreciate it. Yeah. Nice to talk with you.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Colorado TechCast. Visit our website at coloradotechcast.com for episode show notes with links to all the great resources we've talked about in this episode. While you're there, click the subscribe button in iTunes so you'll never miss a new episode. I'm Trapper Little, and I'll talk to you again on the next episode of Colorado TechCast.